What's your birthday?
August 24, 1920.
Okay. And your parents' names and where you were born at?
My mother's name was Betty. She's Betty Shanks before she married. My dad's name was Edwin Bowman Treadway. My dad's forefathers came from England. Father and son came over and landed, and the father died at sea. They buried him at sea. The son landed in Bush River, Maryland. Richard, I think is his name, Richard Treadway, and we all started with that one son.
Wow.
I think some of them dropped the A out. They spelled it T-R-E-D. In my working career and traveling, I ran into one or two other Treadways that worked where I did. Yep.
Okay.
So I was born at Cressmont, Kentucky. There's a huge lumber mill there. My dad was a fine carpenter, and he was bridge foreman into the logwoods for the engine to go in and pull the logs out on rail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, over into the bridge there at Heidelberg going toward May, years ago, the history I've read, Indians lived there. I've got some artifacts come there. There's been a huge amount there. Okay, so how Heidelberg got its name from the history I've read now, and I quote what I've read. Joseph Brandenburg came over from Heidelberg, Germany, and he and his wife, young wife, landed down at what I know is the mouth of Sturgeon Creek.
Did they come in from Boonesboro? Did they go to Boonesboro and up the river?
And then on up the river, yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, Heidelberg was a huge lumber mill, a large one. They brought the rafts, logs down the river and tied them up. And then as they brought them into the mill, they had a thing pull them up into the mill. And there's a large one in a large lumber yard. It went out, I think, in the 40s, sometime in the 40s. They sold out, closed out, sold all the lumber and equipment, everything. Yeah.
By then, people were settled there. So the company left and closed, but the families still lived there in houses?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Heidelberg's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So,
How long did your daddy work for the lumber yard until it closed?
I think the huge mill and all, we left. I was a baby, and we left Cressmont. It closed out and moved to Ravenna, Kentucky. He was a fine carpenter, and he also worked in the shops on repair for the engines and whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's pretty well a skilled man, you know. I mean, he carpenter or whatever. I suspect all the Brandenburgs are kin.
I believe it.
They are. They are. Now, like I say, some of the offspring and all settled over there across the bridge at Heidelberg, you know. You ever hear them talk about Lowell Brandenburg had the store there and all of that?
Yeah.
Well, Price Brandenburg and all them, you see.
Yeah.
And I knew them all. Now, I used to talk to some of the older Brandenburgs. I learned a lot about Heidelberg and all. And I got a lot of history from them. And a lot of them, you know where the cemetery is there?
On the right, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them buried there. And then there's a cemetery on the lower end of Heidelberg.
Okay.
Like you go all the way down. In other words, it'd be right across the railroad tracks from where the big lumber mill was. There's a few houses in there now,
Okay.
I think. So there's the Quillins was married into some of the Brandenburgs, and they're buried there. Now I suspect that Joseph Brandenburg, the first settler, is buried down there in that lower graveyard. I think he is.
Well, I'm gonna have to check that out and see if I can find him.
I don't think he's got a tombstone, but some of the offspring and the Quillins and the kin has. And Samuel P. Brandenburg, that had a big Civil War veteran, had a big log house built when he got out of the war down there. And his sister, I understand, was married to one of the Quillins. Heidelberg at one time was a booming place. And what I knew is you come down like you're going down from here and across the railroad and on down, and before you get down the holler there, if you're familiar with it, right around the side of that hill was a boarding school. And they charged so much a month for my sister went to school there, and I assume my other brother did. And they charged so much a month. They had a dormitory and a huge house for the teachers, one across the creek, where some of them stayed, students, and up here. And then I think from the Lee County history I've read, it closed out might have been in the early 20s.
Okay.
I think it was built in 1913, the best I remember reading. And then when it closed out, they built what was called a free school, where I went to school, there at Heidelberg. You know where the old Baptist church is now?
I do.
Right out for it. That's in that lot. There's a concrete block building there now, a church I think they made out of it. So I went to school there, graduated from high school in 1938.
So the school went all the way through high school.
Huh?
Did the school go all the way through high school there in Heidelberg, or did you have to go somewhere else to high
I walked
school?
right across the road.
Okay. How many graduated together?
12 with me.
Do you remember some of their last names?
Douglas Brandenburg, Lloyd Brandenburg's son. They lived at Cressmont, and the kids either boarded at somebody's house in Heidelberg or walked
Yeah.
to school.
Yeah.
I remember him very well because he graduated when I did, Doug.
Did you ever ride the train?
Who?
Did you ride the train any?
Oh, yeah. Back in my young days, the roads was so bad out of Heidelberg in the wintertime, if you got out, you just about had to ride the passenger train. There was two trains up the river and back from number 1, 2, 3, and 4, 2 up, 2 down a day. From Heidelberg to Beattyville, you rode the passenger train for 15 cents. You could, my mother took me and my sister one time, come to Beattyville, and the rail line run over through that North Natural Bridge country and down through Irving and then on into Richmond. So we rode it one time.
Wow.
And then, later years, you'd catch one into Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And people back then, is a common thing to go to Lexington shopping.
So what did you do right after you graduated high school?
Well, times were hard. Really hard to get a job. I worked at anything I could get. And, of course, my parents helped us. And we done what we could do. Then later years, as I got a little more age on me, I went to work at Bluegrass Ordinance, Richmond, Kentucky. And spent about over 3 years there. Went from there to General Motors in Ohio. Put 30 years up there. Best move I ever made. Good benefits, all of that.
When did you move back here?
I retired July 1 in 82. My wife and I stayed out there about 1 year, trying to make up her mind whether to stay out there or come back. Mm. And we came back and had the home down in Heidelberg, and I had a lot of work done on it. We lived there about a year, and this came up for sale, and I bought it.
Well, where was your wife from?
Lee County.
Okay, so you moved to Ohio with her then. When did you get married?
19.
Oh, no. It's been a long time.
30, in the 30s?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
September what, 1939?
We was about 18 years old. She's a beautiful woman.
Yeah. So she was from Beartrack. How did you meet if you were in Heidelberg and she was in Beartrack?
She came to Heidelberg, visited.
Oh, did she chase you then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what was her family, her maiden name?
Phyllis's mother was a Smallwood before she married, and she's married to Coleman Howell. She's a Howell.
Howell. Mm-hmm. From Beartrack.
No, when I grew up, it's the Great Depression. Tough times.
Yeah.
Really tough. We made it.
Did you do a lot of fishing?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Fishing and hunting.
Yeah.
Yep, I like that. Back then, people, you had to raise a lot of what you eat, you know.
Yeah.
And gardening and hogs and what have you. Chickens. And but we always had something to eat. Yep.
That's good.
Yep. I'll tell you what, back then, you could go in a drugstore or somewhere and they had a photo booth. Pay so much, get your picture. Then she had some of those, and then have them enlarged and all, you know.
Yeah.
So, what I started to tell you about, across the bridge there at Heidelberg, the rail line ran into the Ida May and into the logwoods. When they built the rail line over across Sturgeon into the going toward Cressmont, one of the old Brandenburgs looked at one of the bridges. He said, "Well, that would carry a ton." And Bill mentioned that some time ago to me up there. He said, "They call that Carrollton." I said, "That's exactly how it got its name."
Well, because of that bridge.
Yeah, Carrollton. Instead of saying Carrollton, they just said Carrollton. I remember it.
Yeah.
Had a building there and a weigh station. They weighed, the cars, rail cars, and all that. Yeah.
Now the railroad that went up Sturgeon and all the way up, did it go into Jackson County that way?
Yeah, that's
Ernestville Road up toward Newberry that way. I know that Dad told me there was an old railroad bed that curved around and went into Jackson County.
That's correct.
So that was it.
That's it.
So Todd's Road right now is basically a railroad trestle
Yeah.
where they took the rail tracks up.
Yeah. When I was young, a kid, there's about 5 or 6 country stores in Heidelberg. The country store had a post office, and that's where they'd all gather to get their mail and get the news. Sit around and talk.
Yeah.
And that's the mail came in by rail, passenger train, and then they bring it down, put it up, and you paid box rent 15 cents a month, I think it was.
Wow. Do you remember? Did you ever see the General when it come in? Did it? The General? Did it come through Heidelberg?
Yeah, I've seen it one time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, from what my wife told me, that during the Civil War, it was captured and then a Smallwood recaptured it. Yeah. And they made a run up through here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. They had to adjust the rails to fit the wheels on at that time. It was narrow gauge.
Oh, yeah.
Understand? They fired it by wood instead of coal.
Oh. Well, coal burns hotter, don't it?
Yeah.
Well, they must have used a lot of wood.
That's what I heard. Now I just seen it go up and down, whatever.
So where did you go hunting when you went out in the woods?
Squirrels and rabbits.
Yeah. Did you ever get any good deer? Did you go after venison?
No, there wasn't any when I was young. No.
There wasn't any deer?
No, not around here, no.
Back in the 1970s, when people were buying their deer tags, they were taking a chance on killing a deer.
Why weren't there deer here?
In later years. When I first came back here, I used to like to walk down the railroad and look at the birds and all of that. And I've seen some down there, the deer. But then, no, I never knew of any when I know. That's after we come back here. But of course, they brought them in, got stocked up. I'd say right now, there's more deer here than there was in Daniel Boone's here. Getting back to Updike's store, Botner and Baxter, an old man, Botner, and Bob Baxter, had a store. They were in business together. When Mr. Botner passed away, Bob took over and ran it. In 1939, Virgil Updike bought the store and ran that and his brother Albert was in World War II. When he came home, he went in business with Virgil. Then later years, Albert took over completely and ran the store till it closed out. As far as I know, Mr. Deaton's granddaughter and her husband still lives up on the hill there in that big house. That's the Sears Roebuck house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ordered it out of a magazine, and it.
You know where's Updike's store?
Right up over the hill.
Up on the hill there, where that road turns right up the hill there.
Yeah.
Mr. Deaton lived there for a long time. Then the granddaughter or some of them took over. As far as I know, they still live there. They tried to sell it, and nobody wanted it, I reckon. So it didn't sell.
Hey.
There's something to do every day about a house.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
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 People ask me, how'd you live that long? I said, that's the way God made me. That's right.